the emerging regions in the world. And we have an effort now, Steve Santarelli is pushing this, where we have basically an outreach effort. And that there's sort of like 5-minute YouTube videos released every week, and the sort of the inevitable Twitter channel and the rest of it. But it's just basically trying to get beyond the standard NOGs and the NSPSECs to reach out to a wider audience. One of the developments in the last few months, that's taken quite a long time, is the so-called Dragon Research Group. And Dragon Research Group we started off, 5 years ago, as a team of volunteers. The work we did with, as Team Camry was all voluntary in our spare time. And we still basically have quite a lot of community work and a lot of voluntary work. But in some respects, we've had to go off and seek funding sources to fund the work we do. And one of the probably the slower things that has taken time was the not-for-profit side of Team Camry, as opposed to the Team Camry Inc. And we've now achieved the 501c3 U.S. federal status, which basically means that Americans can make donations and get a tax break on those donations. But under this sort of umbrella side, the not-for-profit side, the Dragon Research Group was set up, and our feeling was that there's a lot of people who want to contribute and to work together. But to avoid the sort of you never know who you're working with type environment, the Dragon Research Group was set up with a period of vetting. Anyone could apply to join, but there's a vetting, they need to be that. And there's an oversight committee which was set up as independent of Team Camry, so an advisory board drawn from quite a range of people. So that's now kicked off, it's running. John Christoph joined us this year. He was formerly with Newstar, Ultra DNS, DePaul. John seems to have worked for several places at the same time. He's sort of leading that effort. And what they're working on now is basically a Linux distribution, mainly for the DRG people, but that will provide a number of tools developed within that community. And then as they get going, they're then amongst themselves and the advisory board, they'll basically do very much their own thing. We've always been a provider of data feeds, and much of this is restricted within the NSPSEC community, primarily because data sources that come from within NSPSEC can only be disseminated back into NSPSEC. But there are some data feeds which, many of which we're the primary contributor. In some cases, if we're the sole contributor, we can determine the distribution. And so there are some feeds which would apply to you guys, but there's other things that because you interact with customers and all sorts of people, I'll just try and describe them and bring them up to date. Open resolvers are a bit of a nightmare. It's not particularly new. This goes back, 2006, 2005. The abuse of DNS servers, which are open to open recursion, subject to cache poisoning and the rest of it. These are basically on the website, and there was a push. The outreach guys call it the Open Resolver Million something or other, but you can find that on the website. Change. Okay. So fundamentally, it's DNS servers which are subject to attack based on cache poisoning and loose DNS server configuration. So you can go to a site and basically it will recurse for you even though it shouldn't do. So it's not following its only resolving requests which are basically it is authoritative for. So this is ongoing work that John Christoph started. He's working Ultra DNS and DuPaul, working with other people. But this really came to the fore back early this year when there was the guys worked with a victim of an attack which was exceeding 25 gigabits a second. And this attack basically, it appeared very clearly that this was a DNS attack. So the attack is basically you spoof a whole bunch of UDP packets as if they come from the victim. You send these to DNS servers. The record is huge, so you send out lots of small packets. The DNS servers scatter around, send back, whale load of really large packets at the poor victim who never asked them in the first place. So there's fragmentation, all the other stuff coming in. It's just pure pipe filler and very nasty. So they had some data and they looked at the initial sources for some of these feeds. There are other people who have been working on these, probing the entire internet and scanning it, the rest of it, looking at. And this is just running. Yeah, this is a short movie which is basically on the website, and it's basically spinning around in microseconds. But this is just over 2-3 seconds, and you can see that the attacks are sort of booming out from Europe, the States, Australia, even Africa is contributing to the Middle East. Very widespread. And of course, these are all IPs that are attacking, which are not bots. They're not malicious hosts. They're not infected PCs. These are legitimate servers which you can't cut off the internet. You can't just block every DNS server on the internet. It breaks things. So, so this is a real problem. How do you do this? And really, it's a scope of attack that's not widely used, but there are a few bad people out there that really know how to make it work, and it's savage, absolutely savage. So, is that still finished? Okay. So I think that's still going. So that's just a few seconds, slowed down. And so we have a report which is open to anyone who is responsible for an AS can request it, and then we will send them an email with data for their networks. And it's not done, it's not updated continuously. So this is sort of from the NSPsec pages. So in a week, it's the number at the moment is sort of around about 800,000, about 1 million IPs, which are being probed and tested and confirmed to be open to this abuse. And the number of ASNs is sort of up there in the 15,000, and then averaged over a year, average over. It's just hopefully these numbers will go down, but the basic problem is that we have to really try and make this more widely known, and work with people so we provide example templates and the rest of the stuff around to get these things. And so often some of these hosts are DSL modems at very low. Of course, they're not really big pipe fillers themselves, but if you have enough of them, obviously it's a problem. But the ones that are basically authoritative name servers are an issue. So the data is updated periodically. Is a euphemism for like once a week or something. And it is quite difficult. I mean, if there's an attack, then you've obviously got a source of valid IPs, and you can sort of update those. But to find the ones which weren't used in that attack, well, not yet, then you have to kind of either sweep the entire internet, which is pretty abusive, and we don't want to do that. So just sort of pick 1 million IPs at random and then just probe those and check them. So there's more on that on the side. So basically, a list of open resolvers that could be abused is a very, very bad list to make public, which is why we're quite restrictive on who has it. It's just basically Smurf, but worse. Those of you who still remember Smurf lists, it was just a wrapper in a script. Pull down the list of IPs, fire your spoofed UDP packet at them, and then boom, down goes the guy on the RC channel. So solutions are basically everybody basically has to deal with that themselves. It may be your own networks, predominantly as customer networks. Another feed which has proved quite popular is the malware hash registry. We get lots and lots of malware that's sent to us and we exchange with people. And this is basically an interface, a bit like some of the other ones, where if you query an MD5 or a SHA-1 hash, it will tell you basically, based on 30-something different AV packages, whether that's been detected as bad. It won't give you any information as to which ones don't detect it, because that causes issues with the vendors. It will just give you a score, effectively. 50% of AV says this is bad, or 100% of AV says this is bad. So it's quite useful when you're dealing with a compromise and you suspect a piece of malware, and all you need is just an MD5 hash. So it's the same usual thing. There's a WHOIS interface, a DNS, a web interface. It's quite easy to use. Hopefully you all know about this, but I mean we've been running this, and it's very popular and devoted following the IP to ASN mapping, so that if you want to know currently within the last the 4-hour refresh period, based on last thing was that 14 separate BGP full feeds, where the IP is being announced. There's basically you can make, if you want to make one individual query, it doesn't really matter which way you do it, WHOIS or DNS or web. If you want to do bulk queries, by which like 400,000, 500,000 queries, then follow the website hint, and you can do a WHOIS query, one single query that comes back like that. If you do 500,000 individual WHOIS queries, you'll find it'll go so far, and then an ACL will kick in, and you won't be able to get to it again. So individual queries, DNS, effectively. Bulk queries, use the WHOIS or HTTP. It is now providing some IPv6 matching. It's quite often quite, as IPv6 basically expands, the information that goes with it tends to be straggling behind. We also do one which those of you who ever work with customers in the financial area, it's called a bin feed. And this is basically bank identification number feeds. In the course of investigations, people come across lists of compromised bank accounts, credit cards, and while some people actually make a business of selling that information back to the banks, we decided that we didn't really want to do that. We'd just like this data to stop, and the bad guys to stop stealing people's bank accounts. So whenever we find this information, we make it available to the banks. So people in the financial areas, they contact us. We verify that they are who they say they are, a bit of cross-checking, and then they get a feed. And again, it's basically, if there isn't any data, then there's no point in checking. We send, it's automated, an email goes to say, yes, you have data, and they can download it. So giving something free to the bankers in this climate is a little bit sticks in the throat. The other tool which really it doesn't apply to I believe any of us in the room is Battle. And this is only available to people in law enforcement. But in the course of contacts, if you find people there, And this basically is a sort of a portal type interface into data which shows, IRC and HTTP botnets, and in recent time periods, what IPs have been targeted for a DDoS attack, and where we have the information, where the command to issue the attack was made from. So this helps law enforcement, so it's very much non-evidential, for information lead only. So this is basically to help them get feel for, like, if something's being attacked, they will see basically the attack IPs, but they don't necessarily know where the bad guy was who was issuing the command to do the attack, where we have the information. So that helps them basically coordinate. So law enforcement works on a very much an informal basis until it reaches the point where, a case has to be set up, then it goes very formal. So that's pretty much all I had to say. Took a bit less time than I thought. If you need to contact us, just the usual contact addresses. Are there any questions?
There was a question, actually.
Hello, Neil. Bradley Freeman from Janet CSERT. I've just had a look at your Battle interface, where you provide some information from the looks of it on IRC and HTTP-based botnets. Would that information be available to people outside the LEO community?
No.
And why not? Because it'd be useful for tracking bots on other people's networks.
So?
Yeah.
That particular interface is only available to law enforcement, so that they themselves know who is accessing it. If you make it open to the wider community, then, to be honest, it becomes available to the bad guys.
Okay.
And that gives them, if they know, oh, that's been detected, therefore they'll change their tactics. It's much, to make it effective, it works with a much more closed environment. I mean, basically, those people who are on NSPSec will see this information separately.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, the solution is, you should be on NSPSec.
Ray Bellis, Nominet. On the open resolvers, do you have any feel for how many of those resolvers are CPE and how many are actual systems?
Contact John Christoph. He's working on a white paper, a more in-depth study or analysis of this with some other people. I think Dwayne Wessels is involved in it. They have some numbers and things, but the numbers are quite large, and it gets a little bit more intrusive if you start pounding on a box to try and figure out, what it is.
Sure.
We always err on the side of caution. If you poke at a box too much, it falls over. It's the usual problem. If the box, contacts us, then we can, find her over it. So, with the numbers, it's really a question of trying to. So the base of the problem is that if you were to sign up for it, and then we'd send you an email that your AS has these IPs that are open resolvers, then our feeling is then it's your problem to say, these are CPs and these are customers, and oops, that's ours. So it's the whole way we operate with feeds is basically, here's some information. We believe it's almost as low false positive value as we can make it. Now it's up to you to decide what you do.
I mean, my thinking was from the fix the vendor point of view, given that there are known vendors out there who do have open resolvers in their DSL routers.
Exactly. Yeah. But how many home users will have a flash firmware?
Not many, unfortunately.
Hello, Dave Friedman from Clarinet. Just to follow up on that question, actually, do you have any mechanisms for providers to be able to feed back information about the data that you give them? For instance, this list of open resolvers, would you be interested in knowing how many of them are CPE by asking the service providers you give them to?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. I mean, basically, contact John, jtk@camry.com. You know, if you sign up and get your list, and then it goes back, then I mean, the scale of the problem is so large that, I mean, these are not being abused constantly. It's not like you know, Windows Net BIOS being, you know, hammered. Just that there are you know, a select bunch of miscreants that know how to use this very effectively, and once they launch the attack, it's, you know, it's more than one ISP an SP can handle, and really just comes down to, you know, you complete the job for them. You just basically take that poor victim off the internet and just divert all the traffic away until it stops. It's a hard one, because there's nothing you do about it. You can't basically go and say we're going to block all these sources, because they're the completely legitimate sources.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Right, so next speaker up is Paolo Lucente, who's going to be talking about his PMA CCT tool.